Give me 2 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I am. Okay. Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. We are here today for a very special episode with my friend and colleague, Guillermo. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing, Joe?
Good, good. So today we're doing something fun. We're going to do some AI debugging all around the 1 Trillion Agents Hackathon that ends on the 2nd. So if you still plenty of time to kind of get building, try some stuff out. But you've been working really closely with a lot of this. You've actually helped write most of the docs, which is really exciting. So you're a very great resource for all of this. And I figured we could spend some time and kind of go through some just basics of getting up and running, troubleshooting, and hopefully people ask questions. You can ask questions wherever you're watching this. Put a question in the chat and it will show up and we will be happy to help you out. So, Guillermo, when people are getting started, if they're building, what's the best way to just kind of get introduced to the concept of building an agent for something like this?
Well, in the case of Near AI, the best resource right now is docs.near.ai, where we have a whole section on agents, and we guide you step by step on how to set up your environment. Even if you don't have Python, we're like, you don't have Python, don't worry. We can help you to set up your Python. And then it's just like one command, Near AI to create the agent, and that's it. You're off to go.
Yep.
And the rest of the documentation will be guiding you, like, do you want to use your personal documentation to create an agent that can answer questions? Sure, we can help you. Do you want to talk with your own documents? We have information for that. And we're adding abilities literally every single week. There's some very interesting stuff that is even coming like next week and the following one. So yeah, just follow docs.near.ai and maybe the Near AI Twitter account just to get like the information on when things are coming out. But that's for sure the best resource that you can find right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought it might be good to walk through some of just the basics of kicking off and getting started a little bit. And hopefully people obviously come and ask some questions. But I do know one of the things that we have heard is sometimes just like getting started and getting the environment set up can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, that's because you actually need to use a specific version of Python, which is like 3.11 maximum. So if anyone is having trouble with, just running Near AI, most probably what you need to do is to create a Python environment, which that will depend mostly on what your Python interpreter is and how you install it. I am a huge fan of something called Miniconda, which is not something that most people love because it's closed source, it's not open source, it's closed source, but it just has so many optimizations and it just makes your life so much easier. So in my case, I use just Conda, and creating a new environment is as simple as doing like Conda create, and then you name the environment, and then you put the Python version. But chances are that you can use anything else. So just check what your interpreter is. How did you install it? If you don't remember how you install it, then it might be also a great time to maybe find a wrapper for your Python, either using PyM or Miniconda or whatever you would like there, and just make sure that you have Python 3.11, because I think the current version of Python right now is like 3.12 or something like that, and make like
something
some
higher.
breaking changes. Yes.
Yeah. It's actually 3.13. So yeah, there's a few versions ahead. Yeah, I think that's great initial advice. So we have a first question here. Is it possible to do image recognition?
That's so fun because so I have you in this screen, and literally in that screen I'm doing image recognition. So I don't know if is it possible to present here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, let me see if I can actually manage to share my screen, in which I promise I have only Python code. Share my screen, allow, and then I can just share this entire screen, which I'm just gonna there. So let me see if I don't know if you can read or not, but actually it's very fun because when I was working until before joining here, I was also so V6IMLEN. I was also having trouble doing some image recognition, and the reality is that we have like there's a small issue on how we handle messages on the Near AI server, which I'm hoping that we can push a fix for today or not. But so this is right now not going to be working if you try it. It's working for me because I'm running it locally. There's a way also to run, for those of you that don't know, there's a way to run the whole Near AI hub locally, and there's a tutorial for that. I will share it now after explaining this. But basically something that you will do is you just open your image, like literally in this case I was trying with different things. So for example, like I have that dog right there, and you just open the image as, I hope that the code is legible, otherwise I can just make it bigger. You just open the image and you encode it as a base 64. So you can see open, reading in bytes, reading the image completely like just as a file, encoding it as B64, and then decoding it as UTF-8. This is just so it can be a string at the end. And then this is the kind of message that you will want to be sending to the platform, which is like the user is sending the content of an image, which is an image URL. This is just how the models interpret images. This is not something that we necessarily choose. It's just like how models have been trained, where you put the data of the image and you explain like this is a data, this is an image, which is like a JPEG encoded as base 64, and then all of the data. And then you can add another message or another content, which is like, hey, what do you see in the image? Tell me about it at length. And then if you just run that, and I think I have it here running locally, which is like, what do you see in the image? It says like, the image provides, let me see. Again, it says that it has nothing on the image, but that's not true. Little model. Making it difficult. Why is it not working? This is why I don't like. There. Like, so the third is charm, and we can see that this image is actually like a dog. And now the model, after failing 2 times, I'm using here. Yeah, your mileage will vary. Your mileage will vary depending on which model you use. Here I am using 5.3 vision. And it says like, the image you have provided appears to feature a dog, especially a Labrador Retriever, blah, 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 blah. Let me see. But for example, now if we give it another image, I think, here we have cows. So if I just use, I think I have to do, let me open image.png. I don't know if this one, because I was also trying to see what happens if you put like a very large image. And let's see if it can do it, or if it just tells me that the model does not accept it enough. Because otherwise, there's another model. The image captures a serene pastoral scene dominated by blah, 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 blah. There are approximately 30 cows, which is actually true. I count them. They're 28. But
That's pretty cool.
I trust them. To be honest with you, I trust the model more because I don't know. And there is this model of 5.3, and then there is also the one of Meta, which is called. I will have to Google it, but I'm quite sure that is Meta 3.290 something vision. I'm quite sure that I put it somewhere in the documentation. But anyway, it will be exactly the same. It's just that model is better. But again, like, just to recapitulate and summarize the answer, you will need to open the image as just a stream of bytes, encode it as base64, decode it as UTF-8, pass it with this exactly. What is exactly that I need for the hackathon entry? What is the issue that needs to be fixed? I can literally tell you, like, we just need to merge a PR that I created yesterday. Yes. So the answer is, we need to just create this PR, which, again, like, the PR is there created, it has been accepted. We just now need a second review from one of our senior engineers, and then it should be good to go. So I'll make sure to ping people today just to see it get through.
Awesome stuff. So what are some of the things that you're seeing of, like, just capabilities that people could actually start building here? I mean, obviously vision is really pretty neat. What are some other things that we can start to do?
Right now, since you can actually run arbitrary Python code, and this is something that I think that is important to be said, and I try to hammer that idea through the documentation. I'm very sorry if we have failed to repeat it enough until it gets into everyone's brain. You can run literally arbitrary Python code. So something that you can do, and that is actually a way that I personally use agents, is that you can use agents as a way to interpret, to know what your user is saying, and as a way to communicate in a different way with your user, right? Because since you can literally run, again, arbitrary Python code, you can do something that is called, like, using tools, which is a very fancy way to just saying, like, you have a bunch of functions on your Python code, and those functions can do whatever a Python, whatever Python can do. Analyze images, do neuroscience, check sound, whatever you want, like, call external APIs.
Yeah.
And then you can just have your AI say, like, hey, I'm an agent that is specialized on medical imaging. What is the user asking me for? The user is asking to actually, I don't know, check their MRI. Okay. Then I'm gonna call the function check MRI, and I'm gonna use it to parse this image that they are passing me, and etc. etc. Or, you can control. Now they have presented like a very nice flow that you can use to buy things in Amazon. But imagine that you have not seen it. Like you did not see what Eric presented, like I think yesterday on the Near AI channel, which if you have not seen it, go and check it. It's in the Near AI Twitter. You could literally just hard code or code the API of Amazon and be like, my user is asking, like the user, I know that he wants to make a search. What is it searching for, right? Like, and the AI can take the input of the user and say he's searching for, they want to search for like a product. Okay, then call the API to search for a product in Amazon. And now what do they want to do? Actually, they decided that this kind of product is better for them. And the AI can really be a very a new way to interact with the software, right? Like instead of like having buttons, and which I have nothing against buttons, I want to say, but like instead of having like buttons and like things that like the UI or the UX that you expected for the user, you can just have natural language acting for you, like yeah, and this opens like infinite possibilities. One that I really like personally is the chatbot that can answer questions about a specific documentation. I spend most of my day writing documentation, and then helping people like by giving support like this.
Yep.
And I was always reluctant to use AI to help with answering questions about documentation because I was not trusting them. But with the newest models that are out there, it's incredible what you can achieve. And I could actually wait. Like I think I have a bot for that somewhere around here. And let me I can share my screen again. And
yeah,
I was not expecting, but yeah, wait. Okay, here I have it. So for example, here is a bot. I have to allow, and then I have to allow here again. Here's a bot that is literally, the bot has read, let's say, that's just not happening, right? Like bots do not think. Remember, agents do not think. I'm a neuroscientist, and I like to stress this out. They are not thinking. It's just an algorithm. But this bot has a lot of knowledge about our near documentation, and it's very interesting that you can actually go and ask like, hey, what is a wallet selector? Or you can say, I am writing a smart contract. How can I do a cross contract call? And what is happening now is that there's a database where all of our documentation is stored, and the agent is trying to search into that database, coming out with a document, and then summarizing that document for you. And now you can see that it's like, yeah, so to make a cross-contract call, you can actually either you create the promise and then you make the function call. And this one is for Rust. And if you're actually doing TypeScript, you can do it like this. And this code is actually right. This code is correct. And if you think about it, like now, I actually trust these kind of bots for like, you have any company, or now you can just go and be like, okay, here's all the documentation that we use for all support. You can give all of that information to the bot, and now the bot has a way to go search for it and come back and tell you something. And when you start to pile these things one on top of the other, right, like very interesting stuff emerged. Like for example, one little side project that and the reason why I was doing like the image recognition and why I also found the same error that this user found is that I would like to create an application that actually we will use here in the house. Like lately we have been into counting calories at the house. And then, like a fun thing to do will be like, okay, so you have like a package of food, you take a picture of like the table of, the nutrition table. And then you just say like, hey, model that can recognize images, can you extract that into an actual table, right?
Right.
And now you have a table. And with that table, you can write Python code, which tells you like, okay, if I have 100 grams of this, then 40 grams is this amount.
Right.
120 grams is that amount, right? You can do math. You don't rely on models to do math for you. If you can write Python code, just write it, right? But then we can say like, okay, so today we ate this amount of this and that amount of that and this amount of this. How many calories, how much sugar, and how many calories do we have left for like our diet of like this amount of calories, right? And that's the part where you just use Python code and like image recognition. But then add the vector stores, which is like this way of like, you know, the database with information, where now we can also start saving like, okay, on Monday we ate this, goes to a database. On Tuesday we ate this, goes to a database. And then, you know, 3 weeks from now, you can actually query like, hey, by the way, like how are we doing with, or when was the last time that we ate blah? And it will go look into the database, come back and say like it was the 5th of February.
Right.
And suddenly from like just having image recognition and from having like a sprinkle of Python code and a small database here and there, you can start to develop very interesting software that like me on my day-to-day basis, I will want to use, and so will do my wife, right?
Right. And it's stuff that you probably would not do otherwise, right? So because it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But what I like about this is, like you said, you can essentially build Python-based tools for the LM to use. So where now, if you use like ChatGPT, you are reliant on ChatGPT to do everything for you. You don't have external tooling tied into that. So this is definitely a different setup.
Yeah, completely. And something that I have to say that I like very much about Near AI, and I like very much about like the current state of AI in general, right? Is that if you have a bit of a knowledge of like programming, it has really come, like we are really now living in a world where running an LLM is just writing one line of code, which is like in the case of like, you know, Near AI is like client.completion, environment.completions. And then the LLM will run, I don't know how, I don't care how, and it will give me back a result. And the models, right, like have come to a point where you can trust most of the time those results. And then, you know, like if you're like me, and even when the models are amazing, you still don't trust them because you see them, right? Like now I asked like, 10 minutes picture, and it's like there's no picture, actually that's a dog.
right
and I'm very aware of that. So you can just, you know, as a developer, you can just adapt to that and be like, okay, perfect, you know what, then I'm gonna use the LLM for the things that will be like, you know, impossible for me to code, like language recognition. I cannot make an algorithm that understands what the user is saying, but the LLM can help, right? But you know, for mathematics, I don't trust the LLM. I can write mathematics on Python, right? It's very simple. Like that's it. I don't trust the LLM coming up with exactly, you know, like all the documentation of Near protocol. But I know the documentation of Near protocol. I know how to find it. I know how to put it in a database. That's it. I trust the LLM with querying that database, and I do trust the LLM with summarizing the document once it found it. And what is going to happen is that, right, like in the toy example that I will want to create of like counting calories, I will trust the LLM to take the image and say like, this is the nutritional table, which if I had to write an algorithm from scratch to do that, I have no idea. Like I don't even know how to start. And I have a PhD on processing medical images, and I have an idea of OCR and machine learning too. But like making the algorithm that will take that table, and I have I don't even know where to start. Meanwhile, now you can just do emp.completions and call this image library, and that's it. Like it will give you the table, and the rest I can do it. So we live in very interesting times for AI, and I'm very happy about that. And if you have a bit, like if you know how to code like a little bit, like you don't need to be an expert. That's also something else that I like. You don't need to be, you know, like proficient in Python, 8 years of experience. Like if you just can make a couple of functions,
Sure.
The AI will help you a lot with interpreting the real world.
Yeah. No, I mean it's you need enough just to be dangerous, right? Like where you know how to ask the LLM to write you. You can even ask the LLM write me some Python code that I'm going to then use as my tooling in my next project. You can just get into this circular thing.
That's
And be
so
successful.
true. Even more now today, even more nowadays with all of like you cannot avoid if you use VS Code, AI is somewhere around there. If you use and like now there's another one that is very much in fashion now. That everyone's using to code like an IDE that everyone's using to code. Do you
Yeah, I
remember
use
the name?
Cursor. That's a
Yeah,
big one.
Cursor, that one.
Yep.
I
Yep.
never tried it, right? Like
Yeah.
so then it's true, it's fun because you are writing your AI while another AI is actually there like being like,
Right. Right.
yeah, maybe you want to call this function, maybe you want to call that other
Yeah.
function. But
No, for sure. It's definitely a fun time. So it's interesting stuff.
yeah, and I'm very excited for like what the future departs because uh like we can talk about this. Near AI has just shown like a demo where people can actually ask an agent to buy stuff for them on Amazon, and those things actually will arrive to your house. Like our engineers have tested it, and like
Yeah.
everyone has been buying headphones, and like now
Right.
we have
Right.
an excess of headphones in the company, but but it's very interesting. Like we are coming to a point where you provide tools and you provide help to the AI, and the AI just thrives by itself. And
Yep.
more importantly, or like a year and a half ago, it felt like only OpenAI was able to do this, right? Like, and only their $1 million per day engineers were they once able to like create a remotely good AI. And now I'm here sitting in my house. I'm and I'm just like coding AIs for me that I'm gonna be using. Like, can you answer questions about documentation? Can you help me count calories? Can you, like help me detect things on an image?
Yep.
And that's it. Like, it's literally for everyone. I really like it, and I'm very excited to see what people is building in this agent, because right, like, there's always someone that will come up with an idea that you're like, that's a good idea. Like,
It is. It's so much based off of like life experience and some of those things. You start to see some different possibilities, and also of like how you start to understand, like you said, like how you understand what the LM is actually capable of, and when you start to understand all those pieces, really, I mean, the creativity really is boundless right now. There's no, you really can try so many different things.
yeah, and I'm personally a huge fan of like simple ideas that just work well. I
Hmm.
really love, like when you have this small project that looks like one of those projects that make you go like, how is that I did not feel that? Like, how is that I did not, thought of that
Yeah.
before, right? Like, those just it's just like maybe 10 lines of code, 20, but it works perfectly and solves like a real problem, and it just goes well. And yeah, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the things that I definitely would like to talk to you about as someone who's been writing a lot of documentation is what has that process been like to go into something that is new? There is no baseline necessarily for you to go off of. You are essentially uh, you are trying things out and writing documentation at the same time. Um, how has that been for you as an experience?
Well, to be honest with you, that's one of my favorite experiences for like of being like a developer relations, of being a dev rep, right?
Yeah.
Because uh, it's very hard. Like people generally don't realize how interesting, how fun, and how also like challenging it is to you just go there. There's like half baked script here, like, or like an idea of an API around there, like. By the way, like now it's much better, right? Like we're not at that point. This was
Right.
like
Right. Right.
when we just onboarded ourselves into Near AI maybe like 4, 5, 6 months ago, right? Like, but not anymore. Uh, and it's very challenging but rewarding at the same time, because you get to play with a lot of things that like no one has played with before. And I'm an engineer myself, so then like whenever something is failing, I can get the intuition of like where could it be failing, and then I can jump into the rabbit hole of like, okay, this line actually is calling this function, actually something is okay, it's here because like we are encoding the API with a specific JSON when we should be making blah blah blah. And it's very nice to do the thing of like create the tutorial that you think will be useful for people and run yourself the tutorial, and then meanwhile go fixing everything that does not allow that tutorial to exist. And when you finish, you not only have a tutorial, but now the product is stronger, like the product is more solid, and I really like it. Like it's one of the things that I like the most.
Yeah, no, for sure. One of the questions that just came in is asking about, is there any dev support? And there absolutely is.
Yes. And actually, there's a whole Telegram channel where if you go and ask, many of us are there. Like we are distributed across multiple time zones. So if you go, there will always be someone. So let me see if I can find it just to share it
It's shared. It's actually in the scroll at the bottom. So it's scrolling on the screen right now. Yeah, so
Perfect.
if it comes back around, you'll see it.
Yeah, so it's at Near AI Alpha. It's a Telegram channel. It will eventually come. There it is. I don't know if you can see it, but I can try to follow it. Like there. So just try to enter there. And there's always people in there. So ask questions. We will be there to help you.
For sure we will. Awesome. Let's see what other questions are coming in here. Let's see. I know there's some. Now I do know that one of the things that definitely comes up is, and maybe you might be able to explain. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot a little bit, but what is the difference between using like a tool versus like RAG, something like that?
No. These are different concepts. So using tools, again, it's just a very fancy way of saying you have some Python functions, and now you just tell your AI, hey, tell me which function I should be calling and with which parameters. We have a whole tutorial. I don't know. Wait, we have documentation in docs.near.ai. Loading agents, and then there's a whole section about tools and commands. I'll send the link here. I don't know how we can share it, but I will just pass it here. So there's a whole there's a whole part where we explain about tools, and it's just, again, like it's a fancy way to saying your AI is going to be able to call some specific functions, which is not to like it's not to downplay it. It's super important. It's just that sometimes we use names and like forget what it actually means. It's super important to have like AIs be able to call like random functions.
Sure.
So basically what you will do is like there's a specific way where you can say like I have this function and I can register it into the agent, and now the agent from time to time will be able to say like, actually I want to call that function with these parameters, and that's it. If anyone is going to be using tools, something that I would recommend you strongly is that make your function like you have a function that is going to be called by an AI agent, which means that hallucinations could happen. So just make sure that your function, your tool, right, like your function is ready for like checking the input, saying like, okay,
Right.
This AI agent is asking me to, like call this, and this. Does that make any sense? Something that I like to personally do sometimes is, depending on the tool, right? Like, but sometimes I like to inject into the tool that I create also the history, like the whole prompt, just so my tool can be like, did anyone ever said, I don't know, it's Joe.near, right? Like if you're gonna be handling like, I don't know, sending near tokens to Joe.near, Did anyone in the conversation actually said Joe.near? Because if yes, then it's something. If no, then it's something else. Of course, your mileage will vary. Like maybe I just say send it to Joe, and the AI is taking that is Joe because he's accessing some database from somewhere. But anyway,
Yep.
always create the input.
Yep.
And RAG that I see that you have your screen there. If you go on the bottom, it says documentation tutorials on the, exactly. So RAG is the idea that you create a special kind of database with documents, and now you augment your agent with that database.
Right.
So the interesting thing about this database, actually, if you go to vector stores, there is the second link on the tutorial. Yeah, and if you go scroll a little bit down, we made a nice. Yes, exactly. So the whole idea is that, and maybe you can zoom in a little bit so people can see it. Yeah, perfect. So the whole idea is that the nice thing about a specific this type of databases, which we call vector stores, is that you put documents in, and they transform those documents into vectors into some vectorial space. So in this case, we have two coordinates, x and y, and each one of these documents, front end.md, API, SDK, smart contracts, all of them are somewhere living in this space. And the nice thing about RAG is that in the same way that it transforms documents into this vectorial space, it can also transform user queries into the vectorial space. So now when someone asks, which is here in yellow in the screen, how can I create an account? Then you can access this database. That query is going to end up in some point, in some part of this space, and you can say, okay, so this person is asking how they can create an account. And the closest files that I see here are the CLI and the API. So you know what? I'm going to use those two files to answer. So now you take those two files and you inject them into the LLM, into the prompt. And now you create a very simple prompt, which is here's all the document of the API. Here's all the document of the CLI. Here's the user query. Answer it. And the LLM will make an amazing job at answering that question using the two documents. So those are the two main things that everyone that our documentation explains, and that I invite everyone to make yourself familiarized with. One is, again, tools, which is a fancy way to say, hey, how to make your LLM call random, not random, but a set of predefined Python functions. And RAG, which is hey, how can I augment my agent with documents, literally text documents.
Right. Yep. Yeah. No. It's a good distinction, and obviously certain people you're getting used to it. And I know one of the things too, if you're using Near AI, that might be a little bit different, that maybe you're not used to. It is the tooling feature. And adding tools. So I think a lot of other agents are mostly based on using some version of RAG, where you are just essentially dumping more data to it. There are some other agent builders like Bitday's agent, which allows you to actually build in some kind of endpoints that is kind of tooling. In here, with Near AI, all your code is right there in the agent file. And then you have to specifically register those agents. It's not enough just to put the code in the Python file for your agent. You actually have to then tell it this is an available tool for you to use as well.
Yeah.
And I'll give an example on that, because I made that mistake myself. So I can show how I troubleshot this here. So I'll actually bring up the agent that I worked on, and we can kind of talk. And again, people, if you're listening and you have questions, whatever else, we can certainly do that. So I made an agent, and I got stuck for a while where I couldn't get the LM to pull the right tools, and I kept actually putting it in the prompt. And that's a mistake that I've seen other people make too, and I made it for a while until I caught on to my mistake. But I was telling the prompt, hey, this is what I want you to go do. I want you to go use these functions, and that's the incorrect way of doing it. Um, Actually, so I've built out, for example, one of my tools here is minting an NFT. I called it minting a treat because my product is called Shard Dog. It's dog themed, right? So minting a treat. Uh,
Nice.
so from here, you can see it's a fairly standard thing of just like, hey, here's the arguments that we need. I provided the endpoint to go hit, and so again, you have to when you're adding these tools, you can't just assume that the AI is going to do everything for you. You have to be able to give it resources to go do these actions. But this is just a straightforward like function. There's nothing really overly complicated here. You can see it's pretty small bit of code, but when it comes to run, I had to actually register the actual tool so it knows to use it. And then in the initial prompt, I said these are things that are available to you. And so if you do not register it here, even though if you put it in the main system prompt and you say, here's what you need, here's where you need to go to, here are the endpoints, it won't do what you want it to do. You need to make sure that you're actually telling it that, hey, we have these things here as well. So lesson learned. And if other people are running into that, definitely something to be aware of as well.
Nice. And I would strongly, like, since we're seeing your code, I would strongly recommend you to double check, like, on like the username that you're sending to.
Yep.
Personally, in my case, for AIs, I have tend to notice that if you use English and like well-known names, everything works perfectly. But as soon as like your name is whatever, like Willor instead of William,
Yep.
then most probably you're gonna end up like William is gonna end up receiving your money. I can depending
Yeah,
on which model you use, right?
that's a great point. Yeah, it does try to correct certain things like that. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's where again, if this is just regular Python code, we could build logic in here easily
Exactly.
to just go in and do that. Um, and then again, and you can see again if you haven't built one of these before, like these are all standard, Python imports. There's nothing really overly fancy here. And it's almost easier than I think some people actually assume. You think of like this, you hear AI, it sounds maybe more complicated, whatever else. I mean, this is less than 150 lines of code. There's a lot of white space. So, I mean, like, this is barely anything. And it actually goes and it lets you create a new NFT collection and mint an NFT. And it does all this stuff and it prompts you and it walks you through it. And it's a super simple idea. It's not like it's not groundbreaking, but it just shows that, like, you don't have to get overly complicated to do something, And then a lot of my programming was then, okay, just make the endpoints, you know? And
Completely.
I'd be lying if AI didn't help me write those too. So
and what you said about like line counting is so true. Like today I was playing again with what you saw about like image recognition, and my 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 small script to count cows, it was like 20 lines of code, because of course
right,
like most of the
right,
heavy lifting is being done by the AI. uh,
for sure.
and, and for anyone, because there's a lot of people that is I've noticed that there's a lot of people that is starting, of course, their career now and starting now, with the whole like the AI is a given and it's something that exists. I remember 8 years ago when I was doing my PhD, like how are you even gonna like image recognition was like a whole, like that's a lot of like that's a whole PhD that you have to do just to maybe be able to create that final script that will count cows. And it's incredible that we have arrived to this point where it's just like, okay, you know what, anyone can do it. Like just write to this one line of code, hit this open, like model, which might not be open source or completely open, but at least like the weights are out
Yeah,
there. Like you just use it, and now it's like just like magic, you get an answer in a couple of seconds. That,
yeah.
like, for anyone that has worked like like in image processing, that's just like, it's so interesting that we can do this now. It really feels like magic, and I love it.
It does. It does. It's really funny, and it's funny that the two of us are on a call about this because we both actually our backgrounds are not in computer science. It's actually you're in neuroscience and mine is actually in psychology. So we're both like, so our perspective is definitely a little bit different, but it is like, it does feel like magic. I mean, I have a similar experience. When I was in my undergraduate, I worked on an fMRI project and I was manually marking changes in brainwaves. I was sitting through and going through each one as the intern, having to mark that off. Now you would just dump it in the thing and it would just probably just return all that back to you. So I mean, it's amazing what it's doing now.
It's very interesting. And by the way, well, I mean, since we are, two people with the background of like neuroscience and psychology here, then I think that it's important for us to say, and remember, AIs are not thinking. There is actually a beautiful website. I don't know, Joe, if you have seen it. It's called the bullshitmachines.com.
No, I have
Which
not seen it.
no, which
No.
like the name is clearly clickbait,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because it's very strong.
yeah,
But it explains beautifully about, like, what the LLMs are actually doing, and like the actual limitations, which is, you know it, it, it they're amazing. We use them, we love them.
yeah.
Just remember, they are not thinking. So as a
No,
programmer, like, if you want to convince your users that they are thinking, that's great, right? Because that's good marketing. But as a programmer,
yeah,
remember that is just an algorithm. So it's not, you don't have a person thinking for you. So act accordingly, sanitize your
yeah,
input. Like, know that it might fail, and you just need to try one or two times. If it gives you an answer, something that you can do, if depending on the algorithm, right? Because sometimes it takes too, depending on the model, because sometimes it takes too long to run. But sometimes you can just do majority voting, like, hey, I'm gonna be counting cows. How many are they?
yeah.
40, 42, 40, 38, 40. Well, they must be around 40.
Right,
So
right, right,
act
right, right.
accordingly. The,
Yeah,
the machine, you don't have someone else being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just like an algorithm. So,
yeah,
yeah, I would encourage everyone to read the bullshitmachines.com. It's very interesting. Like, it's a very nice read, and it's like maybe 10 minutes. So it's
yeah,
completely
yeah.
worth your time.
I'll definitely have to check that out. That's always, that's kind of been like my sticking point when I talk to people too. Is I understand why these companies are using the words like thinking and thought, and I get it because they're trying to make those parallels. But like, yeah, it drives me. It's kind of like a pet peeve too of just it's not
Yeah,
really
yeah.
thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, but I also like that, we are not on the other side of the hating, because like you can totally find, like, if you are a neuroscientist and you have other neuroscientists in Twitter, you will see how so many of them like just hate AI, and like,
right.
and like how, like, no, this machine is not thinking, because in order to think you need the cognition, and for the cognition you need frontal. It's like, yeah, okay, it's just chill. It's just
Right, right, for sure. We don't have any more questions. I definitely want to emphasize that if you are watching this on replay, you can always go to the Telegram group and ask questions anytime. Um, Again, like you can say, like this time, people in all different time zones. So, and you and I are in very different time zones. So, like there's always someone around who can kind of jump in and help. The Near AI team is around and available. They'll help as well. So definitely jump into there. In the docs, and I'm not just saying this because you're on, but the docs have really gotten really great over the past few weeks. It's really in a great spot where you can certainly jump in, start building, and get going from there, and just try things.
Yeah, yeah. And I would like to encourage everyone to actually try it. The barrier to create AI agents is so much lower. If like, were maybe like me a year ago, that you're like, I just, like, I don't have the background, or I don't know enough about machine learning. That's just not the case anymore. Like right now, using an AI model is as simple as like running one line of code. It's not like before. Like, if you also were like me, that where you have been reading about AI for a while, and you were always seeing like how much you had to just fight with the right prompt in order to get the right answer. That has gotten so much better with the latest, like, llama 3.2. Like, everything, like, the barrier is very, 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 very low right now, like, for entrance. So go in, try it, have fun, right?
Yeah.
And participate in the hackathon. You never know what could happen.
Yeah, it's low stakes. It's low stakes. Definitely just try stuff. Yeah, don't be dissuaded by like, oh, I don't know anything about, like you said, like anything about AI or machine learning or any of that stuff, you can certainly just try different ideas, and if you get stuck, ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Completely.
Cool. Yeah, I don't really have much anything else today. Anything you want to end on, Guillermo?
No, that's it. Please come and participate, and hope to see you on the Telegram channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thanks so much. See you later.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.